Good morning. I've said about my Uncle Victor Charles Buono, and I lived with him, ate food with him, driven with him, and sought him reading the scripts and in his parties, and I will never forget him. At the beginning of 1981, Victor Charles was performing in the motion picture Target Earth on February 1st, 1981. And 7 days later, on February 8th, 1981, he was performing in the television movie Judgment Day, starring Barry Sullivan, Roddy McDowall, and Victor Charles was playing the role of Mr. Heavener. On March 8, 1981, Victor Charles was a guest on the Johnny Carson show with Connie Stevens and Byron Allen. He soon performed again in the television Vegas in 2 episodes, The Killing on April 15, 1981, and The Seek and Destroy on April 22nd, 1981. On May 17, 1981, Victor Charles's father, Victor Francis Buono, died at the age of 73 years old. My step-grandfather's death left a great vacuum in the heart of Victor Charles's life. Both of his parents were now gone, and he was only 43 years old. I strongly believe he performed over the years for his mother Myrtle Bell and his father Victor Francis to make them proud of his many acting accomplishments. In the end, with him now gone, and with all his sorrows and wrongdoings now could be forgiven, because his life had glorious chapters as being a police officer, Bell's bondsman, and most importantly, he was the loving father of Victor Charles Buono. New Year's Eve for Victor Charles in 1981 was different, because it was the first time that he and his younger brother, David Francis, were without his mother Myrtle Bell and father Victor Francis. He drove from Apple Valley to Lakewood, where David and his wife Patty and their 3 children lived near Long Beach, California. They had a wonderful dinner together, with Patty making everyone feeling comfortable and being pleasantly filled to the brim from her delicious meal and sweet dessert. They sat in the family room by the fireplace talking about the past years, when growing up, and they laughed about family episodes over the numerous years of living with Granny Grunts, Auntie Susie, Aunt Mary Jane, my father Sonny, Uncle Tony, and their mother Myrtle Bell and father Victor Francis Buono. The clock ticked to midnight, and it was now 12:01 a.m., and it was now January 1st, 1982. My Uncle David begged his brother Victor Charles to stay overnight, but he insisted that he needed to return back to his home in Apple Valley. David tried to have him change his mind, but Victor Charles was determined to make the long drive that night in the dark to his home. While he drove, I'm sure he thought over the many memories of his mother and father, and I believe he knew he had lost something inside, because his 2 very best fans were now gone forever. I was working at a radio station as a disc jockey in Petoskey, Michigan, at WWPZ 1340, and when I entered the building on the morning of January 1st, 1982, I went to the AP, the Associated Press, ticker, to pull off some of the morning top stories for the day. When I entered into the recording room and started reading the news clippings, I suddenly stopped after reading. Actor Victor Buono collapses, dies at 43. Needless to say, I was absolutely stunned. And I immediately called my father Sonny that morning. He verified what I just read, and he too was in a fog of Victor Charles's death only at a short time after New Year's Eve when he returned to his house in Apple Valley, California. On January 2nd, 1982, Victor Charles was in the Gazette newspaper in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and it printed. He was 43. Buono, who weighed nearly 400 pounds, apparently collapsed after celebrating the New Year with his brother, David Buono, of Lakewood, California, earlier in the day. A caretaker, Richard Marninus, found his body lying on the dining room floor when he returned from a party at 4 a.m. Buono was taking medication for back pain, he added. Buono was born in San Diego, February 3rd, 1938. To this very day, the final conclusion of my Uncle Victor Charles's life, when dying at only 43 years old, is hard to accept, because he had so much more to give to the world. Just yesterday, when looking through past newspaper clippings when the Old Globe Theater main stage was burnt down to the ground on March 8, 1978, Victor Charles had performed there in the production of The Last of the Marx Brothers writers on October 21, 1977. In 1978, Victor Charles received a brown wooden and golden metal plaque, printing San Diego Press Club, headliner of 1978, Victor Buono, Entertainment. I have that wonderful plaque of his, and it is hanging on my office wall, and I will always cherish it and the memories of when I lived with my Uncle Victor Charles in Encino, California. Victor Charles was one of the celebrities who came to help the Old Globe Theater to rebuild their destroyed theater. When being interviewed, he simply said, It was my home. It was where he first realized that he could act with all of the other great actors of the world. It was Granny Grunt's director Craig Knoll, costumer Peggy Kellner, and Father John R. Ahern who made it possible for him to climb to the top in Hollywood. In the role of Jimmy Bryce in The Last of the Marx Brothers writers, it was his last performance in a play at the Old Globe Theater ever again. It was 21 years ago when he played in Volpone and winning the Best Actor Atlas Globe Award in 1956. It motivated him to become a professional actor in television and motion pictures. Victor Charles may have seen the restored Old Globe Theater after its tragic fire, but he never saw the first performance staged after it was rebuilt on January 8, 1982, when they staged Shakespeare's As You Like It. He died 7 days before the Old Globe Theater's triumph, comeback from the ashes, and he called the Old Globe Theater as his true home. Victor Charles's ashes were entombed with his mother, Myrtle Bell Buono, at the Greenwood Memorial Park in San Diego, California. He rests there with his mother at Plot, Lily Lake Crypt 1, Tier A. They spent their whole lives together under their same roofs, and now they are together once again, forever. If my Uncle Victor Charles had an opportunity to describe his life, I believe he would say, "I did what I wanted. I loved whomever I fancied, and I'm gloriously happy to have died as an actor."